right, if we can get started with the committee meeting, please. We have a few delegations that have been waiting for us. Thank you for your patience. We were just finishing up another meeting. So we have, making sure we have enough people. We have 5 consent items. I just want to note that number 1 will be going to a special council meeting after this meeting, and that is the exemption, the noise exemption for KW Oktoberfest at the Concordia Club. Moved by Councillor Davey. Are there any questions on any of the consent items? Councillor Yanetsky, which one?
Number 2.
Number 2. Anybody else who would like to vote on taking these out of consent? Seeing none, we'll take a motion to take number 2 out of consent. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those opposed? That doesn't carry. So we have a mover for all of the consent items. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Okay, so we're going to move right on to the on-street parking regulations. Justin, are you here answering questions on that one, or? Oh, okay. It's Aaron, right? Okay. I have Barry down here, so. All right, we'll start with our delegations. We have 4 delegations. Crystal, are you and Claudio coming together or separate?
It's only me. My husband didn't.
Okay. So you have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Okay, thank you. How do I change the slide? Oh, just the back forward? Okay, thank you. So my name is Crystal Bonsi. I'm a resident of 41 Oneida Place for 21 years coming up in November. Generally, from a content perspective, I'd like to point out that I believe the real concern has been misrepresented, and there's an easy way to address the real concern, that there's no evidence or history that the stated concern is real, that the recommendation is not consistent with parking regulations on the same curves on the same street or on similar conditions on other streets. The recommendation actually may create more dangerous conditions on our road, and the recommendation causes hardship to residents on the odd side, numbered side of the street of that same curve. So parking on the northeast side of the curve is not the real concern. So the paper stated the visibility concerns, the safe operation of two-way traffic, and the available or sorry, the word's escaping me, but that emergency vehicles could safely get up that road. And that actually is a concern when there is parking on both sides of the street. But however, when there's only parking on one side of the street, that is not a concern. So when there's parking on both sides of the street, which is generally during children's soccer, people using that street to park for games, there's little room for a car to pass between cars parked on both sides. It is dangerous due to limited visibility of oncoming traffic, and the residents of 37 to 57, so the odd side of the street, have had to call bylaw officials several times every season because cars block our driveways and we're unable to exit our own driveways. However, that real issue is easily addressed in previous written conversations with Ryan Krantz, traffic technologist. He confirmed on July 6th that there is actually no legal on-street parking on the odd-numbered side of the curve due to the minimal space between the driveways, and offered to install no parking signs. This solution addresses all of those 3 concerns documented in DSD 180747, and in addition, it keeps the driveways clear while leveraging existing parking regulations. Again, this is a picture of right in front of my driveway. You see is a car that's obviously infringing on our parking space, and though you can't see them on the other side of this curve, they're all parked back to back, and in fact, on this occasion, we couldn't exit our own driveway because there wasn't enough room to back out. So when cars are lined up on both sides of the curve, it is a problem, and bylaw infraction was called. So this is the picture of the actual curve. And I've lived at 41 Oneida for 21 years, and there's never been an accident related to parking on the even side of the curve, and there's not even a story of a close call. Conversely, on the inside curve, on the odd-numbered side of the street, there has been 3 accidents, 2 directly in front of my house, caused by cars from further up on Oneida, speeding back down Oneida towards Grand River, and 1 directly in front of 37 Oneida for the same issue, cars further up on Oneida, speeding around the curve, going towards Grand River. In addition, their recommendation is not consistent. So this same curve exists at 88 Oneida and 144 Oneida, and there's no change being proposed there. I was told that those curves weren't being changed because they receive less traffic volume, and that the curve with the proposal is one near the trail connection to Morrison Park. However, a few blocks over, there's the exact same curve and the exact same walkway to the trails and parks, and again, there's no proposal there. So, and I assume the similar conditions, given our propensity for parks and trails, which is a good thing, those same conditions exist all over our city, and it's not fair to penalize some residents and not others. In addition, I would say that this proposal is likely to create more dangerous conditions. When there's cars parked on the even side of the street, the cars actually slow down because to make sure that there's nothing coming the other way. If there's no cars there and complete visibility, they just go fast the same way they do the other way around. And it causes residents on the odd side number of the street hardship. We can't park in front of our own homes. Our only option is to park across the street. We can't park there, A, because we know that there's no legal parking, given the measurements of the driveways, and because there's been 3 previous accidents we know not to park there. So finally, the request is don't approve this recommendation. All of these concerns to this proposal can be addressed by putting no parking signs, which Ryan Kratz offered to do there's a typo on this. It's on the odd side of the street from 41 to 53 Oneida, and no formal changes were required because there's already no legal parking spots on the odd numbered side of the street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Does anyone have any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I do have Claudio as a delegation. Is Claudio here?
No, he's my husband and he's a teacher and a staff.
Okay, then we will cross that one off. Brian.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I don't have a presentation to go through. I'm just going to speak my points here, so thank you for your attention. My name is Brian Lieberon. I am a resident at 45 Oneida, directly across from this corner. So obviously this proposal does impact us as well. I am a health and safety manager for a manufacturing facility just outside of Kitchener here, so I understand that this has been brought up as a safety issue, but when I look at safety as a risk. You know, what is the risk factor? And the way we figure out risk is basically a calculation between the frequency or probability of an issue occurring and the severity of an issue. So in this particular incident here, if you're looking at this as a safety issue, I concur with Crystal here that in the 18 years that I have lived there, there's never been an incident there. So I think we can classify the likelihood of an event happening to be very unlikely. The second is the severity. What's the worst thing that could happen if there was an incident? In this particular case, again, cars should be slowing down, coming around a curve, so you're looking at a very low speed possible collision. So again, if you factor those two things together, you're talking about a very, very low risk score here. So when you take this into consideration, does the recommendation actually affect or impact the risk score at all? So I'll speak to that a little bit later. Like I said, my children have grown up on this street. When we moved in, my boys were 8 and 5 years old. They played road hockey on that corner. They rode their bikes, learned how to ride bikes on that corner. I've never felt that they were unsafe in that area. Again, it's a very low volume of traffic. That's why we did pick a crescent to live on, because the only traffic coming down that street is people that live there and the visitors to those homes. It's a very low volume street. With the exception, I would admit, in the last couple of years, with the increased use of the park, Morrison Park, for children's soccer. So now you're looking at a different type of risk. So you're looking at a different type of incident. So you have increased traffic coming in from outside the community. You've got the most severe potential here is actually a pedestrian collision because you have children crossing the street to get to the park. So in those cases, we're talking about 3 days a week, 3 hours a day from 6 to 9 p.m. for about 3 months of the year that there may be an increased risk on this curve. So, but does this recommendation actually mitigate any of those risks? As Crystal had pointed out, that if we restrict parking on this curve, all it's going to do is push cars further up down the street. You're going to have children crossing at more random locations. It's not really going to improve the risk. There's going to be the same volume of traffic coming through, so the same likelihood, and we're really not impacting the risk by approving this recommendation. So my next point is the residential use of street parking, and while we all like to see the value of our homes increase over time, the one impact that has had is that we find more and more adult children now living at home. So there's more and more stress for on-street parking. The city has been very accommodating over the most recent years, being more forgiving with the 3-hour parking rule in residential areas by turning their heads when it comes to the boulevard parking in the winter to get cars off the street. But the fact is that there is more and more multi-generational families living in homes in Kitchener now because they can't afford to move out of the house. So, no, we do appreciate the fact that the city is recognizing this issue, and really, we would just like to have this courtesy continued for our neighborhood, for our families and our visitors, and the people coming to our neighborhood to see us. So in summary, I submit that the recommendation of a permanent parking ban as presented in the report does not reduce the risk under normal conditions. It may actually be more detrimental during the peak use times during soccer season. Again, as Crystal mentioned, with cars parked on both sides, there could be an issue because drivers do not slow down when they go around the corner if they have what they feel to be a better sight line, but with all the extra pedestrians there, if they do not slow down, the risk of a more severe injury is going to be there. So do not feel compelled to act just because somebody says this is a safety issue. Really think about the risk and assess the risk that's involved. And is this recommendation really going to impact that risk at all? Again, we're talking about very, very unlikely situation. And the other thing you may be exposing the city to is, if we recognize that there's an increased risk on this curve and this crescent, really you're recognizing that every curve on every crescent in the city is at a higher risk. And you cannot act on this curve alone without dealing with the rest of the crescents in the city. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Brian. We have a couple questions for you. Brian?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Davey. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just one question. I'm not sure if it's possible, but just thought I'd ask you before you left. If it sounds like it's an issue that's entirely related to the soccer field being used, and it's a seasonal issue, I do think there's other areas in the city where we have no parking for 3 months a year. I'm not sure if that's something that we could do, and would that be, I'm noticing that the majority of residents that did respond were in favor of it. Would that be a compromise you'd be interested in?
Another possibility would be a permit parking to allow residents to park in that area and not external visitors to the area. That might be something that could be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
There's more questions. Councillor Fernandez?
I think the question may be similar to what Councillor Davey asked. If the problem in that curve where the dotted line is where they want to prohibit parking, which is directly across from the trail.
Correct.
Am I understanding that you're saying that you feel it's fine to be parking in that curve, especially given the amount of cars that probably park on the street during your soccer months?
If we really wanted to protect pedestrians in that area, we should be putting in a proper crosswalk at that area so that cars will pay attention to people crossing there. Now, by simply prohibiting parking in that area, you're just going to have people parking farther away from that curve, and you'll have people crossing the street at more random locations.
Okay, and can you give me a rough estimate of how many months in the year you've got the extra traffic because of the soccer?
Yeah, so the soccer season, my boys played minor soccer in that same park, so I can't say officially, but typically from May, June, July. By the end of July, soccer season is usually finished. Usually from Monday to Wednesday of the week, the occasional Thursday. And again, it's from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. because there's no lights in that park.
Okay, I might have a question of staff. Thank you.
Councillor Schneider.
My question is of staff as well.
Okay. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Are there sidewalks on Oneida Place?
There are sidewalks on both sides, correct?
On the outside or both sides?
On both sides, the inside and outside.
Okay, so that sidewalk's not an issue then. So basically, by leaving the regulations as it is right now, and cars parked, they act as a traffic calming scenario because now you got to slow down, you got to maneuver your way through the cars that are parked.
Right.
And then you're going more like 10 kilometers an hour, more or less, because you got to make the proper turn and get around. So it acts perfectly the way you want it, even though it may.
Exactly, that's correct. And sitting on that corner on the Sunday morning when there is no cars on there, cars do come down at high speed. They will cut the corner in the opposite lane to negotiate that without slowing down. So the fact there are vehicles there does act as a traffic calming measure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. That's all the questions that we have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
We have one more delegation. Jack? Come on forward, Jack.
I didn't plan on speaking because when we take a survey on the street and the votes come in, it's not the soccer time that we're worried about, the people on the street. It's the winter time, there was cars parked there, and the snow plows wouldn't come down. I can see their point in talking to the people here in the city and that they won't put the snow plow down if there's cars parked on the street, which is true, even though it was a couple of snow days and things, and there was still cars parked on the street on that corner. When people go down the street, it's every day. It's not just the soccer time. Everybody on our street, if it's soccer time, hey, we don't have a problem. We want the kids playing soccer. People here know how many times I've been in sports and things in this community. I want the kids playing sports. We don't want them. We wish there was more things at that park. But let's have that corner. Soccer time, I don't mean it's regular time that we're having the problem on that street. We had the survey. I had the gentleman from the traffic stood in my driveway and saw cars go down. They couldn't get around. And when the winter time, people parking on that corner overnight is what we're upset about. It's not the soccer, it's the overnight parking and all that. That's what the people on Oneida are here for. We thought because of the vote that it would go through, and we hope it does for that reason. It's not the soccer we're worried about, it's the all the time. Okay?
Yeah, thank you. And just so you're aware and the other delegations are aware, this will come back to council.
Okay.
So we'll take a vote here today, but it'll come back to council in
It will go back
2 weeks. It will come back to council in 2 weeks.
in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. It's a Monday.
So I can report back to
You can.
that it will be 2 weeks' time before it goes back to council.
Yeah, and there's a question for you, Jack. Councillor Marsh?
Thank you for coming in. And I'm just curious, we heard from another delegation that the parking on Oneida is actually, it's very hard to park on the outside curve, on the odd-numbered side.
Right.
So would you see the problem being solved just as easily by having the parking prohibited on that side?
And down around that corner, if there was parking on both sides of the street, it'd be great.
If there's parking, pardon?
I say on both sides of the street at that corner, if there was no parking on both sides, it would be good.
So effectively, right now, there is no parking on the outside?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay? No, I have no... And for the kids for soccer, hey, everybody, let's go. It was because of snow plowing in the wintertime, coming down there in the morning, there's cars parked at the corner. Yes, I would go back to the people that laid out the street. They didn't do it right years ago. But we've got the problem now. I've lived there for 38 years, and it's just been in the last little while that we're having the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the questions we have for you, Jack. Thank you. We'll now open it up to questions of staff. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you. Chair Galloway, Sealock. I'm just wondering, when it comes to the soccer, have we approached Kitchener Minor Soccer and the Romanian Pentecostal Church to inquire about the availability of parking there in that parking lot? Like, I've got it up on a Google map here, and it would appear they've got a lot of parking available at that church, and it's very close to the trail in the park.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, no, we haven't.
Is that something that we could consider?
Yeah, we could look into that.
Okay, because I think that can certainly help with the soccer parking issue on the street. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, thank you. So one of the delegations suggests that our staff has seen great difficulty for cars to go in that curve around to the sort of the straight stretch of Oneida. But what's happening in the other two curves? There's two other curves that is there no parking problems in those curves at all, or no constraints for traffic flow?
Go ahead.
Through the chair, there could be issues in other curves, but this was triggered by residents calling us and letting us know that there was issues at this specific location, which is why we initiated some investigation and then rolled out the survey shortly after.
Okay, I guess I'm kind of concerned that if we implement the no parking here, that we'll see it just push around the curve, around further down the street, and then we'll have, you know, the people at, let's say, 101 complain in a short time, and then a few months later 137 might be complaining because it's moving from one area to the next. Is it better maybe if we enforce our 3-hour parking bylaw in this area maybe a little bit more stringently than if we banned parking altogether?
So through the chair, with cars parked along the bend, staff noted some sightline challenges and vehicle operation, two-way vehicle operation through that bend. And maybe further compounded by the fact that there's park access there and a community mailbox. However, we wanted to understand what those challenges were through the lens of the community, and that's really where we'd be able to implement these parking prohibitions. On its own, those issues, we need them combined, the community support plus the challenges that we've observed in order to recommend it.
Okay, so I think what I'm understanding from you then is it's compounded, this curve issue is compounded by the mailbox and the trail access to the park, whereas the other two curves may not have the same challenges because of those other two situations not being present.
Through the chair, I think you've summarized that well, but also the community support is really important here. I don't think that we'd be able to implement this without the 75% community support that came through.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic?
So just one quick question on the soccer parking issue, and I guess it builds on the point that was being asked in terms of the possibility of the church parking. But has the problem on Oneida increased since, I believe that the lot over at Chicopee in the non-winter months now gets chained off because there were problems with people dumping there? And that was being used as a parking lot as well for soccer. And I'm willing to bet that that may be part of the problem. And so maybe what we need to do is revisit that with our partner at Chicopee and figure out another alternative for dealing with the dumping problem.
Through the chair, I don't have any background on that issue, but we can certainly look into that as a way to help solve the issue.
So going back to my previous role, I remember that we used to have that one open, and I think and I don't know if it has been the last few years, but they started closing it off because there was a big dumping problem. And because what happens is we were using it as a leaf dump in the fall, and then people sort of got in the habit of starting to use it as a dump year round. Or sort of the rest of the time in the spring and summer, and so we started chaining it off in agreement with Chicopee in order to manage that. So that may be part of the problem, and maybe we could look at that as a piece of the solution.
Sorry, Jack, you've already had your say. You can come back to council and say something else.
Definitely hear it at council.
All right.
Last time we filled this.
So, Aaron, you're going to look into that.
We're not worried about the soccer time.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Soccer is not our time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, that's all the questions of staff. I don't think I got a mover for this one yet, did I? Someone want to move it? I'll move it. Moved by Councillor Fernandez. Any comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. So basically,
the date and time?
so the meeting will be at 7 o'clock on the 24th. 24th. It's a Monday night, 7 o'clock. You can call our clerk's office and register as a delegation. And so you see that it passed here. I think it was a 9-2 decision. So it's passed here, and then it'll come back to council on the 24th at 7. So you can register again with the clerk. With that, we are all done our community. Okay.
Oh.
Question, Councillor Fernandez?
Yes, I wanted to ask a question on item number 3 on the consent items. I know that there was 4 of us that were not here when you started the meeting, so I'm wondering if I can still ask a question on the Kitchener Growth Management Strategy Annual Report.
It has been passed, so I'm not sure from the clerk what the procedure is on that.
Through the chair, it may be more appropriate to ask it at council when it's being ratified. It's up to you whether you'd like to permit questions, but it has been motioned and voted on, so there would be a second opportunity at the September 24th council meeting to ask further questions if you need me.
You want to know what? We have a little bit of time, so why don't we, unless the staff aren't here to answer the question, they left. Maybe we can just ask the question and get the answer in an email? If that works.
That's fine.
But I do have to take a vote in order for you to ask your question, because we did that with the other consent. So, Councillor Fernandez wants to ask a question on number 3. Those in favor? Okay. Yep, that carries.
Thank you. So my question is really kind of a general question around, and I put it on page 3-18. We're talking about existing neighborhoods and Crosby and all the different studies that we've been doing. It's helping us project how we're going to build and grow in the next number of years. But I'm wondering if we're seeing that development is paying for development, because as we grow further into our green spaces, we have additional costs for more grass cutting, more snow plowing, and the community's requirements or expectations for more infrastructure like commercial parks and things like that. Is that being built into our growth management plan? So I
So
suspect
I'm guessing that,
the question is being
Justin,
written
do
down.
you have the question and you can respond back in email or at council?
Through the chair, that's correct. So an
Okay.
email will come back after.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that all the questions?
Yeah, I'll ask the other question offline.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, we are all done community infrastructure services. Mr. Mayor, are we going right into special counsel?